Greetings. Today is June 1st, 2021. My name is Christopher Hoster, and I'm the founder and executive director of Opus One Berks Chamber Choir. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the third episode of our podcast, OCTAVO. These podcasts will air on the first of each month, and we'll discuss pertinent topics related to the world of choral music. We'll also highlight important events taking place throughout Berks County, and we'll spotlight organizations and individual performers and teachers who are making a difference in our artistic community. Each podcast will have a main theme or focus, and will feature a guest or two with knowledge and or experience in that particular area. Joining me today are my normal partners in crime, co-hosts Debbi, Silas, and Scott Tice. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Last month's podcast was entitled Complex Legacies, and our discussion centered around how ensembles and music organizations handle complex circumstances. We looked at how singers, ensembles, organizations deal with programming, celebrated works that also contain inherent anti-Semitism. We talked about allegations at the Metropolitan Opera surrounding James Levine, and we also dove into the world of Benjamin Britten and his fascination with youth and his relationships, unusual relationships with young boys. Today's podcast is entitled Music of America, not so coincidentally the title of our upcoming virtual concert, which will be accessible online through TicketSpice from June 4th through June 20th. The repertoire includes pieces that span about 5 centuries worth of choral music. In designing the concert, we really wanted to showcase music from different time periods and different areas of the country at the same time. So we've divided it into different sections. The first section we've entitled Music of Indigenous Peoples and the Colonies. So for that first section, we do songs like Wendeyaho, which is a Cherokee morning song. And it's sung by the women as part of morning prayers and welcoming the new day. So that's a 3-part canon, and there's a flute player also that's playing for that. And the next song is the Spirit Song by the Sioux. And the Sioux, as you know, are a large group of related tribes from the North American plain. And there's a flute player for that one as well as drums. The next section, Sounds of a New Nation. We have pieces that were performed during the American Revolution. The next section is Towards Freedom. We have entitled Towards Freedom, and that features, very interestingly, multiple pieces from the slave songs of the United States. That's the first collection of African American spirituals that was ever published in the United States. It was printed in 1867, and that's 2 years after the Civil War. The next section is Appalachia and the South, and we highlight music of the Sacred Harp tradition. And then the final section is called God and Country, and that includes a lot of patriotic tunes and religious tunes that we also associate with patriotic American music. So we have a lot going on in that concert, and it's a big melange of American music.
So, Chris, when you thought about designing this this concert and it to be about Americana, did you have any issues with any songs that you chose that seemed insensitive to certain of diverse groups in our country?
Right. So, I mean, I did want to showcase music from the indigenous people. So I really wanted to have that component as part of it. I also wanted to showcase music from the spiritual collection. And I thought those were very important. The first part of the concert also begins with selections from the Bay Psalm book, which is the first printed book in British North America. And that was in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1640. So that's 20 years after the Pilgrims first landed. So we do have music trying to get this broad expanse of what American music really is. And yes, I did have to be careful because there is American music, and quite frankly, it's a lot of American music with some pretty harsh and clear racist overtones. I did want to represent what American music has been and is, but I did also want to be sensitive in that regard as well. And so, yes, I had to be careful.
Scott, you're singing in the concert, correct?
I am, yes.
Okay. So the music that you're singing, is there much that you knew from before, or is it basically a lot of things you never sang before?
There were not a whole lot of pieces that I knew prior to getting the music. There were some pieces that I had sung in other ensembles when I was in college and in other places, but most of them were new to me. But once you listen to the recording or listen to whatever Christopher sent us, they weren't, I don't want to say they were easy enough, but you could pick them up easy enough, if that makes any sense. The one that I didn't have that much difficulty with, because I loved taking sight reading when I was in college. I minored in music, and I took several sight reading classes where you just basically opened up your book and you did not say the words that were on the page in English. You just basically did the fa, the las, the dos, and so forth. So we did do those two pieces in the beginning with Christopher, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the solfege, correct?
Yeah, solfege. Yep, solfege.
Yes. And that's just basically where you see the words that are supposed to be a part of the song, but we started off by just naming them as far as the do, the re's, and so forth and going on. That took some time. I enjoyed doing that because I wasn't so much focused on the actual context of what the words were, but I was more focused on just the lyrical part of the music, and also just hitting those notes rather than just gliding into them, because oftentimes, depending on the way that you pronounce a certain word, can change the overall sound of the sound that you were going to make out of your mouth. And with singing by ourselves along to a recording, I found that to be quite challenging. I do believe if we were in person singing these pieces, it would have been a little bit easier to blend more. But I am really anxious to see how not only these two pieces, but the other pieces that we put together, how they're all going to come together for our concert. I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, the pieces that Scott's talking about, there's two selections. Those are the two selections from the Sacred Harp tradition. And that's a really interesting part of choral history in the country. So Sacred Harp, for those of you who don't know about this, it's a Protestant singing tradition that originated in New England. And it later migrated over 100 years. It migrated to the South and to Appalachia. It's associated with tune books that are printed in shape notes. So instead of the actual note head as we would recognize it today, the round note head and and filled in or not filled in. They have additional shapes that are associated with these solfege syllables that we would recognize today. The solfege is basically the same, but in that traditional Sacred Harp style, there are no dynamics. It's all just loud. There's no text stress. You're not worrying about how to pronounce the words, like Scott said, or the stress of the syllables of the text. It's just, straight from start to finish. This is what it is. And when you sing the music, traditionally, you're supposed to be in a box formation, a square, and on each side of the square, that's where the different voice parts are aligned. So sopranos would be on one side, altos would be on another, tenors and basses would be on opposite sides. And then somebody would just be in the middle, keeping time with their hand. It's just a really interesting sound. And since it moved to Appalachia, the South and towards Appalachia, it has that really bright sound normally to it. So if you listen to Sacred Harp singers, you'll always hear this nasally bright, what we normally would consider not a pleasant sound to listen to, but I think it's really interesting. And the pieces that we're doing, one of them is David's Lamentation by William Billings. And William Billings, not to go on a further tangent here, but William Billings is really considered to be the first American choral composer, American-born choral composer. And he's part of the first New England school.
So it sounds like the audience is going to be have a lot of different genres of music that they're going to be listening to. Because when you think about music of America, you think about marches, you think about, songs that you learned when you were in high school or in elementary school that everybody sang. And those are probably the ones that are not the best to sing right now. But it sounds like, it's going to be really an interesting mix of different.
It's really great because we start, we have those indigenous pieces that are just beautiful. They're gorgeous. We would probably consider them simple today, but I just think they're beautiful and breathtaking. And for the traditional choral pieces that we would recognize, with those bass psalm books, the psalters from New England, we start with music that was brought over from Europe. And that Sacred Harp tradition is something that grew right out of America, not brought from Europe. So we get this indigenous music, we get music that has been sort of transplanted to the continent, and then we also get this music that has been cultivated from those two sort of traditions combining. And I think it's a really great mix of pieces.
Scott, is there anything else you'd like to share about the concert?
Nothing other than if everyone checks out our website, on Chris, if you're going to plug the concert, on our website will be a link for anyone who is out there who's listening to this podcast to go ahead and listen to the concert. All the instructions are there on how to download it and go ahead and watch it. Christopher, at this point, with all the recordings and stuff, do we have an approximation of how long this concert is going to be as far as minute-wise or hour?
It should be the standard hour 10,
the hour,
something like that. Yeah. And the website is just a normal website, www.opus1chamberchoir.com/events. So now we are very fortunate to have with us for the interview the Chief Warrant Officer, Jeffrey Spenner, who serves as the Assistant Director of the United States Coast Guard Band. Jeffrey Spenner joined the United States Coast Guard Band in 2019. He helps manage all aspects of the 55-member ensemble. He's a veteran of the 399th Army Band at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Mr. Spenner is the first conductor of in the U.S. Coast Guard Band's history to have been hired from the outside the organization. While a member of the 399th Army Band, he took part in hundreds of performances throughout the Midwest as both a conductor and trumpeter, and his efforts were instrumental in developing an ongoing relationship between the 399th Band and the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Previously, Jeff has been the assistant conductor and operations manager with Battle Creek Symphony in Michigan and artistic and education coordinator for the Lexington Philharmonic in Kentucky. He has his bachelor's of music from the University of Illinois, where we went to school together. Yay, Fighting Illini. And he holds a Master of Music degree in orchestral conducting from Western Michigan University. In concert and select workshops, he's conducted such ensembles as Baltimore Symphony, Battle Creek Symphony, the Berlin Sinfonietta, Cabrillo Festival Orchestra, Cincinnati Symphony, Fort Worth Symphony, Symphonia da Camera, and members of the Berlin Philharmonic and Philharmonia Orchestra of London. And I can't think of anyone better on this podcast that we're entitling Music of America. I can't think of anybody better to have on than the assistant conductor of the Coast Guard Band. So it's my pleasure to introduce Chief Warrant Officer and Assistant Director of the U.S. Coast Guard Band, Jeffrey Spenner. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us.
No, it's great. I was thrilled to hear from you. I mean, as you mentioned, we went to Illinois together, and we collaborated a little bit there. I was trying to remember what the last thing we would have worked on was.
I can't remember what we worked on last together. It's so long ago, Jeffrey.
I mean, there was gallantry. There was all sorts
gallantry
of stuff.
we worked on. I remember doing gallantry. Yes. Yep. Together. That was that small like chamber opera, I think, right?
Yeah, and I basically talked myself into conducting for the pit because they were just going to do a piano for that, and I'm just like, no, that's dumb. Maestro Diaz Munoz, if I can get an orchestra together, would you let me do it? Oh yeah, sure, okay. I'm sure he thought there's no way in heck that he's going to get this orchestra together, but somehow people actually.
I think it turned out great. Actually,
no,
I love it. Wonderful. Yeah.
But no, I was thrilled to get your email, and I've kind of kept tabs on you a little bit since we parted ways at Illinois, and it's just so incredible what you're doing there in Reading, and the work that you've done since then, and to be asked to be one of your first guests on one of your latest big projects, it was just it's a privilege and it's an honor, and I'm just really happy to be here.
Well, great. We're so happy to have you. The first thing that I want to ask you about and just pick your brain about is we tried to get you earlier in the week to do this interview, and you couldn't. And there was a really great reason you couldn't, Jeff. So you should tell us what the reason was why you couldn't join us earlier. Because I saw you in the front page of the New York Times, which I have right here.
Well, I actually wasn't there, so
Oh, you weren't. Oh no.
So one of the things about being the assistant director is there's a lot that I do behind the scenes, and there's also a lot that I do, on stage and whatnot. But when it comes to ceremonies of like that, my role is more in case the head guy can't do it, gets locked in a bathroom somewhere, or gets food poisoning, then I'm the dude that they call. So I should back up and give context. So this past week was a bit crazy because we had the I want to say the 140 something commencement exercises at the United States Coast Guard Academy, which is the 4-year university that graduates the leaders of the Coast Guard, the officers, the women and men who serve our officer corps. So they go through 4 years. It's a college. They get a degree, and the commencement speaker and the person presiding over commencement this year was President Joe Biden. And so, this whole past week was just awash with a lot of preparations. And I mean, we had Secret Service on base already last month preparing and whatnot. And so Wednesday and Thursday, like I said, I was mostly on call, so that the second that I get a call, I had my uniform in my car because we were locked out of our building. I wouldn't have been able to get into our building without like going against all sorts of security protocols and whatnot, much above the secret level clearance that I hold myself. And so I had my uniform in my car, I had my baton just in case, and ultimately nothing happened. So I got
No
to
food
enjoy
poisoning then, right? No food
no
poisoning.
food poisoning. The bear trap I left didn't go off. You know, it was it went off without a hitch. And so the band's director, Commander Adam Williamson, my boss, was able to handle those ceremonies. But yeah, it was a bit of a weird week because it was a lot of hurry up and wait, and plan to do things that you probably won't be doing but need to be prepared to do just in case, which is kind of half the job anyway.
That seems to be the job of an assistant conductor all the time. I think not just in the U.S. Coast Guard.
Yeah, I would say that's true.
Hi, Jeff. I'm Debbie. My question for you was, what was your background and what were the requirements you needed for this position? But since Chris said so much, if there's anything that you would like to add that he didn't add, could you share that with us?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks again to Christopher for embarrassing me and pulling my bio and talking about all the things that I sit back and oh, did I really do that? I guess I did. As he mentioned, and as is mentioned in my bio, I'm actually the first conductor of the Coast Guard Band to be brought in from outside of the ensemble. So traditionally, the band is 90 some years old. We celebrate our 100th-year anniversary in 2025. Traditionally, what has been done is that it's a military organization. So when the director leaves or the assistant director leaves, it creates kind of this upward vacuum in the rank hierarchy structure of the organization. And so people from within the band would apply and be selected as either the assistant director or the director, whatever the open position was. And so this past time, so it was, I guess, end of 2017 or maybe in 2018 when the assistant director retired. He retired after 20 some years of service to the country. He started out as a baritone sax player, also another U of I grad, I found out. So there is a strong University of Illinois tradition, I guess, with the Coast Guard Band. That
As there should be, Jeff, as there
should be, absolutely. In fact, fun side note, from my audition for the band, I was required, of course, to pick a march, typically, you know, John Philip Sousa. So I picked the University of Illinois March by John Philip Sousa. So, you know, I bleed orange and blue still, you know, 15 years or so after graduating from U of I. Anyway, so background, yes. So in 2018, 2017, I forget exactly when the assistant director chose to retire, but he retired. And they decided that instead of simply promoting from within, they would look outside of the ensemble. And the reasons for this, at least what I'm told, because obviously I wasn't there at that point, was they wanted to bring in potentially new blood. They wanted to really elevate the position, because also traditionally, so it would be a saxophone or a trumpet player or a percussionist or whomever would be promoted up, and they wouldn't necessarily have conducting training. They would be trained on the job. So maybe, you know, the first time that they're standing in front of this world-class organization would be one of the first times they were actually standing on a podium, which has its issues and has, you know, its pros and cons, but it's certainly a challenge. And again, especially talking about an ensemble like this, because we have graduates of Juilliard, we have graduates of Rice University, Northwestern University, University of Illinois, University of Michigan, Michigan State. I mean, you name the top music program, we've got people in the band from this. These people, easily go toe-to-toe with their colleagues in Boston Symphony, New York Philharmonic, and frequently guest and substitute with orchestras such as that. So they decided, okay, we're a world-class organization. We should really hire our leaders and our conductors like that sort of organization. How they got stuck with me, I'm still not entirely certain, but they decided to open it up to an outside audition. So members of the band were still able to apply, but they also opened it up to other services. I was in the Army at the time, but also civilians. And they selected, I think there were 4 finalists, of which I was one. And then ultimately, I was the one that they asked to be the assistant director. And I mean, I will never forget that day where I was, sitting at home and I got that call, and it was just one of those moments where, life is changing. Like this is a life-changing sort of thing, because I was a trumpet player in the Army, mostly doing a little bit of conducting, but I was mostly playing trumpet. And now I don't play trumpet at all. I am completely a conductor. I was going from, conducting maybe 1 performance every year or so to my first year in the band, I conducted 33 performances. And so, I mean, it was just an absolutely life-changing experience. And yeah, I'm so thrilled to be in the position that I am, because I get to work with some of the most phenomenal musicians I've ever worked with. It's the dream of any instrument, like a violinist. It's a dream to play on a Stradivarius violin. It's a dream of a trombonist to, have a custom Shires trombone built for them. I feel like I have that sort of level of instrument at my disposal with the United States Coast Guard Band.
Jeff, with the 6 branches of military that we have, excluding Space Force, I'm assuming that anytime we see any kind of band on TV for any kind of ceremonial thing happening, that would be what would be called the premier band. Is that what you are mainly in charge of, or are there other bands besides a premier band that gets to play at different places and people can be a part of?
So the way that I think about it, and I should preface this by, okay, there are the 6 branches. Each branch, except for Space Force, has their own dedicated music program. So the Marines have their premier band with the United States President's own Marine band, and then there are the fleet bands, so bands spread across America and the world that are Marine bands, but not that premier band. The Army, of which I'm most familiar with other than the Coast Guard, has a couple what they call special bands. There's the Premier Band, which is Pershing Zone in Washington, D.C. They also have the West Point Academy Band, and they have the United States Army Field Band, which is the touring ensemble. But then they also have 30 some other bands. Some of those are active duty, some of those are reserve. And so when you do watch something on TV, it really depends on where that thing is and what the level is. The way that I usually describe it is it's kind of like the orchestra system in America, where you've got, your top tier orchestras, New York Philharmonic, Chicago Symphony, Boston Symphony, Philadelphia Orchestra. And then you have equal, you have not lesser orchestras, but more regional orchestras. You have the Pittsburgh Symphony, you have Kansas City Symphony, you have St. Louis Symphony. And these are still phenomenal musicians, probably the same level, but they are not necessarily responsible for the global musical world as the New York Philharmonic, but maybe more regional. And then you have organizations like I've worked with in the past, the Battle Creek Symphony, Lexington Philharmonic in Kentucky, that are the smaller regional orchestras that often feed into the larger orchestras. I mean, in Lexington, actually our principal trumpeter in the Coast Guard Band was a former trumpeter in Lexington Philharmonic. And I don't think we ever had a principal trumpeter longer than a year in Lexington, because they were constantly winning bigger jobs. So it's a matter of geography in a way, and it's also a matter of like what what level exposure it is. So as an example, I think it's the Coca-Cola 600 or something. I'm not a NASCAR fan, so don't quote me on that. But over Memorial Day, there's some big race down in North Carolina. And we are actually flying our vocalist down to represent the Coast Guard because they're doing it as a Memorial Day salute to the armed services. So for national level events like that, you'll often see premier band musicians. But even in saying that, for that specific instance, they are also having instrumentalists from some of the more regional, like National Guard bands and things like that. So what's really incredible about all of this is that you get to see and hear and work with so many incredible people and musicians. I mean, I worked with people at the 399th Army Band in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, who could have easily been in one of these premier bands. And either, the ensemble didn't have an opening at the time because, there isn't always a spot for people, or they just wanted that part of life. It's really kind of dealer's choice in how these musicians want to structure their lives in the military. So, even at the 399th Army Band, which was an ensemble of 30 some, it wasn't a full wind ensemble. There were no double reeds, so couldn't really do Granger or anything like that. It was still working with phenomenal musicians. And now, I mean, I feel like I go to work with a silver spoon in my mouth because I have a fully formed, fully fleshed out wind ensemble in front of me, stockpiled with some of the best musicians in the world. And I can put anything in front of them and they'll be able to play it.
Just piggybacking on that, with looking at all the branches of military, I think one of the misconceptions, and I think I had a misconception with that, and I've had many friends, and I'm a teacher as well, and I've had many students who have gone into one of the branches in the music program. They go through the same boot camp, I would assume, that everybody else says. They're just not going there and just playing music all the time. They actually go through everything that everyone else goes through. It's just that it just so happens that they just have a side as music. Is that correct?
Yes and no. Again, it's hard to throw these generalizations out because each branch, while there are more similarities than differences, there are differences. So the Coast Guard Band is one of two bands, the other being the President's Own Marine Band, which does not require basic training, military basic training. And the way we get away with that, or the reasoning behind that, is because when you boil it all down, basic training is the beginning of someone's military education. And so that is what all that education is built on. So if we'll take a typical example of, an 18-year-old decides to join the Army, they're going to join the Army as an Army cook. The Army is going to teach them first how to Army and second how to cook. For our folks, they already know how to cook. They already know how to play their instrument, and at a super high level. They come in at such a high level and degree of education, literally degrees of education. You've got masters and doctorates. I mean, I'm in the minority in that I only have my master's with these folks. They come in at such a high level that we are able to waive that requirement. Now, again, we are one of only two bands of the hundreds of military bands that America has that does not require that. When I joined the Army, I went to Army basic training. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, which is the home of the infantry, which was a heck of a lot of fun, I can tell you that. But if you are, so if you're the Army, you go through Army basic training. If you are in the Navy, you go through their basic training at Station Great Lakes in Chicago. If you are in the Air Force, they do things a little bit differently. You join so you go to basic, but you are also put, so I had platoons in the Army, they call their groups, pods of people, flights. The Air Force has the band flight. So you will be going through basic training with other band people. Where going through Army basic training, I was the only band dude there in a barrack of 100 people. And I was doing the exact same thing that the future cooks were going to be doing, future truck drivers were going to be doing, future infantry were going to be doing. The Air Force, They still do all the military training, but they're actually, it's kind of cool. They are their own band at basic training graduation. And at the same time, they learn what it means to march a ceremony. They learn what it means to have all the protocols with that, where I, with the Army, graduated after basic training and then went on to more Army training, but this time at the Army School of Music that was specifically for that thing. The Marines go about it yet again a different way. Other than the President's Own, which I mentioned before, does not have basic training for their musicians. If you are just in one of the fleet bands, however, you do go through not only basic training, but you go through infantry basic training. So you basically go through basic twice, and then you go to the Marine School of Music, also on base at Virginia Beach, where the Army School of Music is. So there, like I say, there are a lot of similarities, but there are differences enough where if you said you're a teacher and you have students who have gone in and maybe are continue to be interested, it's enough of differences to be sure to kind of steer people, okay, what is it that you want out of this? And so, like, I also say, if I can make it through basic training, anyone can make it through basic training. But, you know, if that isn't for you, well, then really your only option is to get into one of these upper echelon President's Own or Coast Guard band. And otherwise, it's, you know, what are the differences between the branches? And that's not only with training, but with the culture of the branch and what sort of music are you playing and what sort of gigs are you going to be getting? Because Air Force is a little bit different from the Marines, which is a little bit different from the Army. There are enough differences to really make it worthwhile to talk with people who are doing it, and talk with people, not recruiters, but talk with military musicians of the different branches to get a sense of, what does it mean to serve your country as a musician in the Marines? Or what does it mean to serve as a musician in the Air Force, etc.?
What my next question was where does your band typically play and for what special occasions? And you already shared that with us. What other types of occasions does the band play for? I mean, and how you said that you directed 33 performances last year. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay,
yep.
So how many performances in all did the band perform?
So I don't have that stat in front of
okay.
me,
All right.
but it's easily hundreds of performances that the band did, and I should qualify that in saying that I'm talking everything from sending a solo bugler out to perform taps at a graveside ceremony for an active duty funeral, all the way up to a full band event. So my involvement is going to be typically with conducted chamber ensembles, full band ceremonies, things like that. So I personally conducted on 33 concerts my first year. And this past year was all wonky because of COVID, of course. But to give you another sense, tomorrow we are starting our rehearsals for our, what I'm calling optimistically robust summer season, where over the next 3.5 months or so, I will be conducting 19 concerts, which is really thrilling, and I'm super excited to kind of get back in the saddle for that. But to your question, the band performs a lot of different things, all the way from public full band concerts here at our home in New London, Connecticut, on board the United States Coast Guard Academy, to full band concerts out in our communities. We play all around Connecticut and New England, doing little run out concerts to communities here and there. To a national tour every year. Sometimes we go twice a year. The last tour that we did, again, before COVID times, was throughout the upper Midwest. So I got to go back home to Michigan and show off my shiny new band. And we actually ended up in Chicago. So that was really cool. But so we tour around the country because we are the only musical representation, not only of the United States Coast Guard, but of the Department of Homeland Security. So what I mean by that is the Army, Air Force, Marines, Navy, they all have multiple bands. We are it for the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is very small. The entire population of the Coast Guard is probably the entire population of the little town in Michigan that I grew up. So we are the one and only. So what that means logistically for us is we are doing a lot of the things. Not only are we doing the premier band thing, so playing for the president, when the White House calls and says, hey, we want the Coast Guard band to do this thing, we're down there doing that. We also are doing the same sorts of things as the regional bands are doing, so the local outreach and stuff like that. On top of all that, we have our ceremonial aspect. So if there's a change of command, when the commandant of the Coast Guard switches over, we are there supporting that military ceremony. When there is a high-level funeral, when a former commandant or an admiral passes away, we are, we are there present for that. And so there's the ceremonial aspect. And then on top of all that, the band breaks down into small ensembles, brass quintets, woodwind trio, harp and flute duet, pretty much any sort of small chamber ensemble that you can possibly think of, and also goes out and performs missions, doing ceremonies, doing concerts, doing educational outreach. It's really an incredible smorgasbord of music and opportunities that we do. And I think that's one of the really enticing parts of the job. And I think that's what really appeals to me too, because in any given week, I could be playing for the president. I could then turn around and be supervising a jazz combo ensemble. I could then be doing a full band concert in another community, and then coming home to record our well, not CDs anymore, because we're not actually producing the CDs, but making our latest recording. And this is music all the way from Gustav Holst and Granger and the real milestones and pillars of the wind band repertoire to jazz and popular music and folk and all these different things. And like I say, it's just an incredible opportunity. It's an incredible responsibility, because it's not only we're representing the Coast Guard, Department of Homeland Security, but even broader, we are representing the nation. We are representing the diversity of the nation. We are representing the just the sheer amount of people and diversity that we have and make up the United States, that we have to represent in our programming, in our ensembles that we put out there in the world. And it's just a really, really incredible experience and really incredible honor to have.
Well, that's just wonderful. And you know what? You actually answered my next question anyway, too. So I was going to ask you about programming. So I was trying to think, like, our next concert coming up is called Music of America. That's what we've entitled the next concert. And it's sort of this melange of, 5 centuries worth of American music, not just in the British colony kind of thought patterns of America. We do have some indigenous repertoire that are focusing on too, and we're also singing some slave songs from the first book of African American spirituals. And so my question was about the repertoire selection, but who does decide that? Is it you and the other assistant directors that say, hey, this is the music we're going to perform for this event? How much of that is, if you are just sending like one bugler down, I mean, how much of that is managed?
So, I mean, we are a military ensemble, so I guess I'll say, the buck kind of stops at the top. So it's me and my boss, the director of the band, that have ultimately overall responsibility for what goes out there, what we program, what our ensembles program. And, we've made mistakes and we've played things and we go, maybe we shouldn't do that again, or maybe that wasn't the best idea. And we're constantly learning too, but ultimately it's our decisions. I mean, I like to think that we have a pretty open and inclusive mindset to what it is that we actually perform, and also open and inclusive to others' ideas. I mean, I'm always happy, and I know my commander is always happy when a musician approaches either or both of us and says, I heard this great piece, or I've always loved this piece, I want to do this piece. And 9 times out of 10, I'll say that, yeah, we'll program it, we'll do that. But we also, I think, have that responsibility to, when you look at what we're programming, it is representative of the Coast Guard as a service, and it's representative of our nation as a whole. So for example, the program that, or my part of the program at least, that I'll be rehearsing starting tomorrow is a British march, The Vanished Army with Kenneth Alford. It is a piece called Elegy for a Young American by Lopresti. It was written in 1964 as a reaction to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And then there is a piece that is criminally underperformed, in my opinion. It's the Folk Suite by William Grant Still, who is a phenomenal African-American composer and is just not performed as much as he nearly should be. And, you know, you talk about spirituals. I mean, this thing is just chock full of that life experience. And it's something that is not typically represented, at least to the level I think that it should be, in the wind ensemble, or certainly in the music field as a whole. So, I mean, these are the things that we constantly think about. And I was listening a little bit to your last podcast, and, you know, talking about programming and things like that. And these are questions that we wrestle with all the time as well. And, you know, my personal philosophy is that for every piece that I do program, there are literally dozens of pieces that could have fit the exact same bill. So it's my role and it's my responsibility, and it's the onus and weight of responsibility is kind of on me to curate that like a museum curator might, of, okay, what is best representative of what we are going for here? And, you know, like I say, I strike out sometimes, probably more often than I even think about or know, but it's a constant learning experience and revamping. And I mean, to give you an example, we looked around this past year, you know, as we're sitting with COVID and trying to figure out what we're doing. And one of the things we decided to do was revitalize our music library. We have over 2,000 pieces of full band music in our collection. Of those over 2,000 pieces, we discovered that fewer than a dozen were by women. And that's just absurd. That is just, that should not have happened. So we spent a lot of money and we spent a lot of time going in, researching and finding other pieces. And I don't have the stats in front of me. I wish I did, to tell you that, you know, we went from like whatever, 3% of the library is women to whatever. I don't have those stats, but we are making more and more conscious efforts to make our programming look like what the service looks like, look like what our country looks like. And so, yes, back to your question, Christopher, like who ultimately decides? Ultimately it's my boss, the commander. He if something goes wrong, his head is on the chopping block. He is the one who is answerable to anything that happens with the band, whether or not he was directly at fault or involved or whatever. And kind of by proxy, I'm the next person going to be, you know, dragged in front of the admiral, going, "Why'd you do this?" With that also said, I am in again. I feel like I have a silver spoon in my mouth because he gives me so much latitude in my programming. My programs are truly my programs. He's not saying, Chief Warrant Officer Spenner, you are hereby ordered to do this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece. No, if it's my concert, it's my concert. And we split full band concerts, typically, you know, maybe 60-40, or maybe even like 55-45, where he has his concerts, I have my concerts. And then in the summer, or if we're doing run out concerts, typically that same sort of like 60-40 split will be in one concert. So for every 6 pieces he conducts, I conduct 4. And then I serve as the master of ceremonies, and I'm fully involved with the rest of it as well. But even in those times, so the 3 pieces that I mentioned to you just a moment ago that I'm going to be doing this week and starting out this summer, those were from a list that I gave him and said, "Sir, this is my wish list of what I would like to conduct." And then he goes and he takes that and he compares it with his similar list and goes, okay, well, what are we trying to program? And I mean, just as you or I do for a normal concert, okay, we've got Memorial Day coming up, so this is going to be a Memorial Day theme, so we're going to do this and this and this. And it's just, then at that point, it's just plug and play of, okay, I want to evoke this emotion here, so we're going to do that and this and that and other thing. And again, with always in the back of our mind going, okay, for every piece that we're picking, there are literally dozens of other pieces that we could be picking. So we have to have a really good reason why we're picking this, especially at the expense of not doing these other ones. So it's a jigsaw puzzle, but it's a fun one. And again, I'm so thrilled to have the group that I can put literally anything in front of them and they can play it and play it well, and also to have the freedom with which to program the way that I see best and the way that we see best as an organization to really fulfill our mission of service to the Coast Guard, to the Department of Homeland Security, and to the nation.
Well, that's great. Jeff, thank you so much for being a part of this. It's so fantastic to have you on the program, and you're a wealth of knowledge about the U.S. Coast Guard, and I learned a lot just, in these last, half hour. I just learned so much about the whole system, and it's very interesting, and we're just thankful to have you with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, you can definitely tell by the way you talk about your job that you love it.
That's right.
And thank you for sharing all of that information. It was so interesting.
Now we turn to Music in the News. This is a segment in which we will highlight music events, other local arts organizations, and address particularly interesting topics that relate to the arts. Debbie, what are the upcoming events in our area?
Well, thanks, Scott. Coming up in the month of June, we're going to start with Berks Sinfonietta on Saturday, June 12th. They are doing Music in the Mountain, and it will be a live performance at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary Amphitheater. For information and tickets, go to berkssinfonietta.org, and you can get more information there about that performance. On the same day, June 12th, a program called Movie Music will be live streamed or a limited audience at the First United Methodist Church in Lancaster by Allegro Orchestra in Lancaster. The information for that would be at allegrolancaster.org. Reading Civic Theater will be coming back for live performances on June 4th, 5th, and 6th with a performance of Godspell. Godspell will be held at Alice's Lutheran Church on Kutztown Road, and information for tickets you can find it at readingcivic.org. Also, if you are interested in joining us at Opus One, we are having open auditions, and you can go to our website, Opus One Chamber Choir /ensemble, and you can find more information out about Opus One. And we're having an early bird special. If you join before June 12th, there will be a discount. So for now, that's all that's happening in the Berks County area. I am sure over the summer, with things opening up a bit more, there will be more things happening that we will share that information with you. Bye for now.
At the conclusion of each episode of OCTAVO, we'd like to recognize someone in the local community who is fulfilling Opus One's creed. Together, we can make Reading sing in a special segment we call Who is Making Reading Sing? Because this episode focuses on American music, we wanted to feature a local ensemble with a long history of performing American music in their concerts, the Ringgold Band. Today, we are joined by Chuck Ebersole, the director of the Ringgold Band. Greetings, Chuck, and thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
So Chuck, I'm going to start with a question. Please tell us a little bit about your organization, its beginnings, and its mission.
Okay. The Ringgold Band is almost 170 years old. In fact, it had its start in 1852, and I believe we're the third oldest continuously running band in the United States. And it's a great organization with a lot of history. We get our title from General Samuel Ringgold of the Spanish-American War. He had a special style of fighting called the light artillery. And so he formed the light artillery brigade here in Reading. And so the first name for the Ringgold Band was actually the Ringgold Light Artillery Band. A couple years later, it just got shortened to the Ringgold Band. But one of the interesting things is the Ringgold Light Artillery was the first regiment in Pennsylvania to answer President Lincoln's call to arms in the Civil War. So they marched to Washington, and the Ringgold Band accompanied them from Berks County, which was it's a neat part of our heritage. But it goes on that I am the 10th director. I believe it's 10, and I follow the director with the longest tenure in the history. That was Jim Seidel, and he retired in 2018, and that's when I took over. But it's another part of our history is we were the last band conducted by John Philip Sousa. Sousa was the guest conductor in I should know this, 1936. He was the guest conductor, and he did the concert with Ringgold in the afternoon on a Saturday afternoon. Had a meal at the Wyomissing Club restaurant, and then spent the night at the Abraham Lincoln Hotel, and unfortunately passed away during the night. So we have that distinction. One of the things we do now is play the Stars and Stripes Forever at the end of every concert. Of course, we do many marches, but Stars and Stripes is a tradition. And that's our mission is to continue to bring great concert band music to Berks County. Not just the historic stuff, not just marches and 19th century overtures, but we do modern works for concert band and a lot of different things.
Very good. Chuck, this past year, obviously, with the pandemic has been difficult for everyone, causing everyone to think outside of the box and be creative in how they can continue with whatever they're doing in their own life. How has the Ringgold Band coped with this pandemic, and what is the future for the band moving forward?
Well, I'll answer about the pandemic first. We rehearsed up until I guess the second week of March in 2020, and then like everybody else, we shut down. So our final public performance was in December of 2019, and so we just sort of hung in there, and I would occasionally send out listening assignments to the band, and say, hey, listen to send them YouTube links and so forth, and ask them to listen. Toward the end of the pandemic, I sent out PDF files of music so that the band could start to practice again. But one of the things we did to keep going was we did 2 virtual recordings. In the summer, we had asked the band to record themselves playing Sousa's King Cotton March. And then we fortunately have a recording engineer who's very good at that. And so he taught me a little bit so I could help him, but he basically put it all together, which is a mammoth task, actually. It's amazing. One of the beautiful things about music is, we sit next to each other and sing or play, and our minds work so quickly we don't realize, when I'm not playing exactly with the flute or the trumpet player next to me, I automatically make adjustments, and you follow the conductor and the whole ensemble sticks together. Well, when you're doing a virtual recording, you're playing along with a quick click track, or we use the Marine Band in our earphones to play along with, and it's amazing how different the different parts were when they send in the recordings. And so we had to line them all up and adjust the dynamics and so forth. So it was a task. But we did King Cotton, and then at Christmas we did a piece called English Christmas, and put together a bunch of Christmas recordings along with the virtual recording on YouTube.
Nice.
And then maybe one of the things that we're really kind of proud of, Carrie Schultz of the Reading Music Foundation mentioned to me one day, she said a lot of the older people in Reading might not be comfortable going online to hear the music of the band. She said, why don't you put together a CD? And so we went back through the recordings of the last 25 years and put together a 2 CD set, which we called the Ringgold Collection. And just, it was really fun to find, some of the best recordings that we had in the last 25 years and put that together. And then we gave it to a lot of the senior centers and so forth throughout Berks County. And so now they'll be on sale at our concerts. But it was quite a project. But those are a couple things we did to keep things going.
Nice, very nice.
That was a really good idea. I mean, because it is true. I mean, our older people don't have the technology that these younger people have, and I mean, I still am a CD person, but I mean, we're doing a show coming up soon, and they don't even. I mean, kids don't have CD players. I mean, they don't have them anymore.
Right.
Okay, so my next question is: now that you talked about what you've done this year, could you share with us about the summer and fall and next season and what it looks like for the Ringgold Band?
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to announce we have our first live performance on Sunday.
Oh.
First time in 17 months that we're together playing. It's at Hamburg. The borough of Hamburg contacted us and wanted us to do something patriotic for Memorial Day. And so we're playing at Etchberger Park there, Hamburg Community Park. They have a band show. And so that'll be Sunday at 4:00. We rehearsed the last 2 weeks for the first time at the Liederkranz up on the mountain in one of their pavilions. Although everybody in the band is vaccinated, so we'll probably be able to move inside before too long, is what we're hearing from the CDC. But we basically have pretty much a full summer of work. We haven't lost any of our jobs that we had scheduled for 2020. And so we have Etchberger Park. We're playing a 4th of July thing in Brickerville for the United Lutheran Church there that we do each year. Locally, we play at the Stone House at the end of July, and at Fleetwood Park, at Hill Church, and at the Ole Fair. So it's a pretty full summer. So we're anxious, eager to get out in public again.
It's exciting to know that feeling that we are getting back to some semblance of normalcy, and that people can go and experience live music.
Yes.
With all of the venues that you mentioned, Chuck, is there somewhere, I'm sure online, there's somewhere that they could find a detailed list and schedule of your performances and how someone could possibly, if they wanted to get more involved with Ringgold Band?
Yes, that's all on our website. So yeah, I'll give you 2 answers there. It's ringgoldband.com, simple to remember, all one word. And there they'll find a list of the concerts and performances, but also a link that if someone is interested in joining us, they can email or click on the link, and then we'll get information out to them and get them involved. Many people in the last couple of years have gotten involved that way.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I was just speaking with my father. He lives up north, and I was speaking with him. He's like, so he said, tell me a little bit about, what are you doing? And I said, well, I have a podcast. And as soon as I mentioned Ringgold Band, and now I have never knew this, he's like, oh, I played in the Ringgold Band. And I'm like, when did you play in the Ringgold Band? He's like, oh, I was 8th grade clarinet, and he went to Wilson High School locally here in West Lawn. And he said, yeah, he said, I played clarinet, and then he named 2 or 3 other people. And I said, what year was that? He's like, and then he had to think about it. He said 1958, he believes that's when it was, because he started playing football in 1959. And that's when he had to give up the clarinet because he couldn't be part of the music program and the football program. So I said, I never knew that you did that. And we do have other members throughout the years, especially with Opus, a couple members that have been in it. And I know when I was in high school, a couple of the band kids that I was friends with also played maybe a season or 2 with it. So there's a long-standing tradition that just continues to just evolve over time. And the fact that it's still the test of time, especially in these trying times, is just a testament to the group and what it has to offer, not only Berks County, but also beyond.
It makes me think of our membership. One of our strong points, I think, in the band is our board of directors. The band, of course, we have music teachers and some, professional musicians, but by and large, it's engineers and business people and bankers and teachers and so forth. And they love music, and they have this passion that they've developed. And it's just a really great group of all different kinds of people. And it's all because of the love of music that they're together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. I taught for many years with Jim Seidel, and he was the band director for both of my, like in the marching band for both of my sons. So I taught his children. I mean, so it's kind of, we go back a long way.
Yes.
Do you have many young people in the Ringgold Band?
We have this summer. There's 5 or 6 college students that are coming back just to keep their chops in shape over the summer. And there's a number of other younger people. We have 1 8th grader or 9th grader.
Oh, wow.
That's joined us in the clarinet section. But it's a pretty good mixture. I mean, we do have some older members. One man that actually has been playing since the early 1950s. So he would have played with your dad, Scott.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So our bass drummer.
Okay.
He's just
Okay.
one of the premier bass drummers in the nation.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they back in the days before everybody wanted to play the drums, they didn't have as many percussionists in the band, and so they had this one person play both bass drum and cymbals. They had a cymbal mounted on top of the bass drum, and so you play the bass with your right hand and the cymbal with your left. And Brian, his name is Brian Holt. He's excellent.
We mentioned earlier where people can find information about your upcoming concerts and so forth. I assume that if somebody who's listening to this podcast is interested in becoming a part of the Ringgold Band, I'm sure there is a process that they would need to contact you and set up some type of an audition and stuff. Do you hold open auditions, or is it more or less when a member leaves a certain section, that's when you need to fill a seat?
Really neither.
Okay.
If someone wants to join us, they come out, and anybody is welcome to play in the rehearsals.
Okay.
Now, if they want to become a member of the band, then the section leaders talk about that.
Okay.
But so not everybody is granted membership.
Sure.
But they're welcome to come out to rehearsals and even some concerts if we need people in different spots.
Absolutely. Thank you again for sitting down with us today and for doing this interview. We really do appreciate it and everything that your organization has to give, not only, like I said, the Berks County area, but also beyond. So thank you again. We do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Have a wonderful summer of performances.
Yes.
Thanks so much. And you too.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion and that you join us next month for Opus One OCTAVO. And remember, together we can make Reading sing. For more information about Opus One, visit our website, www.opus1chamberchoir.com.